So firstly, I want to thank everyone for attending today and taking some time out of your very busy and hot day here in the UK or wherever you are in the world. So I hope you're having a great day. What I wanted to cover today is kind of doing more with less or being more efficient with your cloud or clouds in our multi-cloud optimization and of course our security. So I'll do a bit of intros. My name is Gareth. I'm one of the system engineers here at Ringcast. I'm a 6-time V expert, and I'm also one of the V expert pros for our region. So, I help candidates get through that program. If you're looking at going into that kind of thing, please do reach out. It doesn't mean I have to just look after someone in my region. I'm happy to help anyone out there. And what I do day to day is I write some of the checks that you'll see in our product later. I kind of bring those things to life. I look at different ways of how we can look at security and compliance and how I can get those into the product and how I can make your day and your lives, be that for your system engineers or if you're heads of or CXOs, how do I make your teams more efficient? In my spare time, if you've seen any of my other talks, I love to play with code. I come kind of from a development background, so I like playing with code and tinkering. This mainly drives around things like my home trying to be smarter, be that turning lights on and off, or trying to be a bit more eco-friendly and getting the most out of my solar panels, or just generally having a bit of fun, having like disco mode with the lights and kicking off my songs to make sure I'm out of bed in the morning. If you haven't been living under a rock today, I'm just checking that my levels are okay. You might have just seen something quite big. The internet was down for many people. So it couldn't have happened on a better day for me doing this in ways. I saw some really big things go offline. I saw Twitch go offline. I saw major news outlets go offline. Reddit, which is a place where a lot of us nerds go and hang out or even try and find answers to stuff, was offline. So that was quite shocking, just seeing a lot of these things just go off the face of the earth pretty quickly. And, I think some were even off for as long as an hour. So, yeah, that was quite worrying. And I was going to, actually name this the elephant in the room, but I already had this slide, the elephant in the room. And it's going to be quite controversial is what is multi-cloud? The way I see this is it can be a numerous different platforms. This may well be that you have VMware in your estate and you have Hyper-V, and they may see those as two private clouds that you consume. You may have Nutanix in there or Kubernetes, and yes, I will drink to that before anyone shouts at me. All these new clusters and new technologies are coming along, not only in the clouds that many of us see. You've got your AWS cloud, you've got your Azure, you've got your Google. These are just other ways of consuming compute or storage, and how do you interact that within your business? I kind of want to go over that kind of back to the elephant thing a little bit. Is many businesses will start with a data center, be that in your building, you're rented, you might be somewhere else. It's just quite interesting to see how this grows. When I got into IT, it was very much you would have your data center normally in a basement somewhere where we go hang out, and if you're really lucky, you might have 2 or even 3. You might be buying a new set of offices and you'll put it in there. And a strategy that's come up quite a lot now is the secondary data center may not be a data center that you might be able to go touch, feel, tinker with. It may well be the cloud, hence why we're doing all this multi-cloud stuff. One thing I see a lot of businesses doing now is using this cloud first initiative. And they say, well, actually, I only want cloud. And this is where some mistakes can be made, and hopefully we'll cover some of these today, is they will just have one cloud and only one cloud, and go back to some architectural decisions back in the past why you might have 2 data centers. And you'll see this happen. They need to get rid of everything when people are moving up to the cloud as well. And it might be for cost, it might be for efficiency. Many people do it for many reasons, but they always forget about the most important thing is protecting your business and your business assets. You might just see that as the cloud and everything's fluffy and everything's fine. But depending on the way you start to architect this, you may well put yourself in a worse position than back in the day where you just had all these cranky servers sat in a basement somewhere. And that's why we then want to look at multi-cloud. Look at this as multiple data centers that you can access and you can leverage and do it a lot more agile and quicker than we did in the past by filling in forms and network connects and things like that. So, there's a lot of things that you can do a lot quicker now with the era of the multi-cloud. So I kind of want to go over the, that problem of it is, there are more and more and more of these technologies jumping out of us. Where do we start? Kubernetes is a big thing for many people these days. You might have a lot of infrastructure on your own estate that you want to leverage, and how do you do that? You've got things in Amazon and AWS with EC2 instances and Elasticsearch and network load balancers, stuff that you really want to grab hold of that you might not traditionally be able to buy. It could be cost prohibitive. And how do you start picking apart all these things? How have you got the skills in house, or is this why you're outsourcing to clouds? Is it because you don't have the skills and the cloud just gives you that ability? The best thing to do is empower your staff. And that's the way I see this a lot of times. A lot of people see this move to the cloud as a negative thing, and embrace it. You can get some really great tool sets out there that might enable you to do things you couldn't in the past. That kind of leads us on to the first somewhat controversial topic, is optimizing ROI. I can say I've made many mistakes in my cloud journey of sometimes actually costing more than what I would have done if I did it myself. It's a really, really easy mistake to make, rather, because every cloud is built differently. These differences aren't just covering the physical infrastructure that might be there. It might have different characteristics in how the databases work, to how the load balancers work, to how network traffic flows. That is a really big thing that many people miss with the cloud. They might think, well, actually, I've got my EC2 instance here. That's really cheap to run. It's much better than replacing my infrastructure. But you may well leave a database back in the office, and those two have got to talk. And that's where you can sometimes get stung. There's ingress and outgress charges on particular platforms that may well creep up on you depending on how you implement them. And those prices can continue to rise and may well be a bit of a shock. But it's impossible to predict until you do some of these things. You just have to kind of go in it sometimes, both feet first to understand, does this work for your business? Sorry, excuse me. It's nearly impossible to predict the costs and data flow sometimes if you don't fully understand your apps, or you're doing something completely new. You might be producing a new app that does something that you've never done before for a business. But the fundamental thing of this multi-cloud is it keeps your choice open. You can stay ahead of the market, and you can even maybe do something your competitors aren't doing by leveraging these new services. So, just look at these things, and, I'm going to put cards on the table as an ex-systems engineer. I know there's probably a lot of head odds probably listen to some of this as well, is, we can easily make mistakes. When the sales paperwork comes through, you might see an EC2 instance costs X. This is a great thing. We're going to be radically take away all these costs from you having on-premise hardware and all these maintenance support contracts. But that is assuming you deploy them in the right way. I've been guilty of doing this, is by one afternoon, click, 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 deploying an EC2 instance by maybe not reserving the instance or doing things called spot instances where you get the best price by committing to it long term. And before you know it, it's gone into production. It happens to all of us. I've done it. And either document this really well on how you built it so you can rebuild it again, or do go back through and check those instances. Did you just spin it up to get out of a problem? And this is the one other thing about the ROI, is when you buy a set of equipment, its parameters and you know how far you can stretch it. But with the cloud, I've also been guilty of this. You want to fix things, and when you have a department or a head of at your desk saying, I need it fixed now, in the traditional sense, when it's your own equipment, you might just give it some more RAM, or give it some more disk, or give it some more CPU, and that's very easy because you know what you're constrained to. In the cloud, that's just unfortunately going to increase costs. So do go back. You might have had a marketing campaign happen, and you might have needed more website power or grunt or more load balancers. So do go back and review this. We're all guilty of it, and it's easy enough when it's your own kit because it doesn't normally cost you any more, but the cloud does. So do go back and check on these things. And that takes me on to kind of my next thing is, for me as a networking side as well, where I had a lot of networking skills, is you're so terrified of giving up control. And this isn't always a bad thing, because this can enable other teams. I went as far as giving some of my first liners access to the firewall when it was in the cloud, because they could. It was that simple, click, drag. You could give them certain parameters of stuff they can and cannot do. And firewalls by far my favorite example for this. They can be complex beasts. I can remember working on Cisco SAs and a lot of that in code and trying to remember where everything is. And, everything must be in the right place at the right time. And if a server suddenly moves, that could all break. Whereas in the cloud, things can get tagged or put in groups, and these rules can be assigned dynamically. And the other thing it also opens up is something called microsegmentation, something that none of us have always had in the past. It's been very hard to implement in some instances. Is you can, again, because of these tags, you can say, this web server here can only talk to this web server here, or this database and this web server. And you can also do other layers of looking at things that production can't talk to test, and just make sure that people aren't doing things that they shouldn't be. And those tags can help enforce those things. So, that can add an additional layer. It's on this slide here. Your app can only talk to where you say it can. And that is a really good way of maybe broadening your security posture, is putting some of these things out there just to try and lock things down a little bit better, especially if your team don't understand some of these technologies, or teams have moved on. It's not that bad replacing these things. A next big one is again, I think with this whole COVID situation, is low latency. It's actually kind of what ironically hits today, is something called a content delivery network. The best examples of this, you might use these when you're watching Netflix or getting certain forms of data. Put that data as close to your users as you can will give them the most optimal experience. I'm going to probably harp on about this later on, as where all this loops back to is good architecture, and that's where the multi-cloud really comes in powerful. Is data locality is the key. If you have your database one side of a region and maybe your web server's in another place, all that latency adds up and can impede your users' performance. It might even be your external users. Are your external users trying to commit an order on the website that then talking to something somewhere else, and that can slow things down. So do be really careful where you start to place this data. And it's enabled a lot of businesses who do have multiple offices to stick things like VDIs in different areas. You might want to put some here in the UK, you might have offices in Europe, and you can distribute those really nicely and quickly. And also on that, you might have another added bonus back to the security element, is everything is still within those data centers that you control or run or own. And how you then manage that data becomes a lot easier, rather than being on people's laptops or being on USB sticks, or again, slowing your users down. So that kind of leads us into autonomy, and we've making sure data is where it needs to be. And another good thing about the clouds, be this your own that you're building or the common platforms, is vendor lock-in is kind of the IT paradox of the cloud adoption. A lot of those vendors will try and lock you in some way, shape, or form, because they might have that really shiny feature that only they do. And again, those things, data locality and this, all tie in together. So when you're picking your clouds, really look at those things: is how do you get data in, and more importantly, how do you get that data back out? For any reason, how do you get that out? It might be free to get in, but is there a cost to get that back out? And at the end of the day, data is king, and that is how your business functions. So do really, really make sure that you know how that is there. Apologies, a bit particularly sorry today. One good thing about autonomy as well is you can teach these clouds, in essence, of different things. You can set tolerances for expansion, maybe. Again, I'm going to go back to an example of websites. Is you may well have a load balancer that looks at your website, and you might have two web servers set behind that, so it can comfortably tick along. That's your normal daily pattern, your normal traffic pattern, and everything works quite nicely. What you might find is something that says an unseasonable spike. You release a new version of your product, or something big happens, like a news article, and all this traffic comes to your website. This is where some things can then panic. And the best thing about the autonomy is it can maybe auto scale for you. So it can start to look at things and go, oh, there's a lot more traffic here. I now need 2 load balancers, and I might need 3 web servers or 4. And it can just, you can set those tolerances of what you find acceptable for your web page to maybe load in, and it can just build those out. And then when things die down again, it can maybe shrink that back down if you set it that way. And again, this is what I said again about all these things. Do go back and check, because sometimes they don't always go back the other way. And we've got to protect that ROI. If you've done this for a cost reason, do go check that these things are happening. I'm just going to make sure there's no questions while we're going along here. So again, one that can be, again, a bit of, sorry, yeah, mic stop then. And another odd paradox is it's less disaster prone. I think today's example is, seeing a lot of things go offline is a prime example of that. Is, multi-cloud infrastructure kind of embodies that whole kind of thing. Is, you really got to look at that ancient proverb of don't stick all your eggs in one basket. Same with having your own data center to putting it, something in one cloud. Although vendors typically say they can offer 99.5% availability, what about that last 0.5%? What happens if that's at your busiest time of the year, or you're just releasing something? What reputational damage can that have if your customers cannot get to your website or access your services? These are the times when you've really got to look at your architecture and start to distribute that load across multi-clouds. Have a look at ways of maybe not just having one vendor of load balancer. Do you have 2? So if one vendor goes offline, use something else. Or you might have all your DNS records you can put in another pot if that DNS vendor goes offline. Do something really simple. Maybe just having a website that could be off on GitHub pages. A real simple one saying, sorry, we'll be back soon. We're performing maintenance, where if, God forbid, everything goes to the floor like it did today behind the CDNs, you can point your customers to that, because I can assure you right now, it's much better than getting a 404 or 503 page, at least to get something that's a bit more visually pleasing. Saying, we know there's a problem, we're working on it, and your techies can go off and go fix these things in the background. And it just goes back to those whole kind of BCDR plans. We always think just putting stuff in the cloud, we can click and forget about that, but it's not. Do always have a plan B. Clouds do go offline. What do you do if your website's offline? What do you do if your email isn't accessible? What ways have you got to continue? What way can you get your business to continue? Many clouds do have multiple regions in a DC. You might have an availability zone in a particular data center of A and B, or you might have another region, or even a whole nother network. Do look at these things when you're placing your data or virtual machines in these clouds. Look at that as an architectural point of view. How do you spread these out? I'm not going to bring up some poor data centers name. They did, again, have a fire this year. And that took up 2 availability zones at one point. That's all your eggs in one basket. Do you have your data elsewhere if something horrible like that happens? And I've kind of touched on this a bit, is optimizing your costs. It's great having all this elasticity. Yeah, brain's gone today. Sorry about that. You can stretch and shrink as and where you go. It's a really, really great thing. But again, it's also understanding where all those things are. I kind of put thermometers on here because you need to understand what's hot and what's cold. Production hopefully is always going to be hot. That needs to be there. But can you maybe do something with test and dev and pre-prod? Can those maybe go in some slightly slower tiers or data tiers that might not be so frequently accessed? Could you go lower than Glacier storage or S3? Look at all these things when you, especially in AWS, look at your storage levels. Azure's very much the same. As how far down that stack can you go, and how often are those things being used? Can you put, certain old files? People are migrating file servers up there now. Can you stick that off somewhere else? Monitor your resources. I've harped on about this a few times. Go in there. It's something you spun something up you accidentally forgot about that you were testing. It's just sat there burning through money, burning through stuff. In the past, maybe we didn't care, but in the cloud, unfortunately, it comes off a credit card or a PO somewhere. So do keep an eye on those kind of things, and it's going to trying to create this common layer where things do funnel through and get checked. I'm going to touch on it a bit further later on. You do keep those things of prod, test, dev. It just helps kind of clear things up, and even review your clouds. What was right going off on day one might not be right the next year. You might have gone into AWS this time, but Azure might be better for that particular service a year later. Things evolve, so do try and keep your finger on the pulse there if you can. I'm going to circle back to this common policies. One of the key challenges for this is basically leveraging APIs. All of them have an API, and maybe finding tools that can help you keep consistency. Consistency can also help with fault finding and just making sure things are all running tickety-boo, especially if you're deploying different things in different areas. Many people know I've done talks on this before. I'm a massive fan of Terraform. They've had some great news today as they've just released a new version. So I'm bound to go play with that later. And what that allows me to do is to create a common infrastructure across multiple platforms. So I can set the kind of scene that, my VMware stack will have this many VMs and this networking layout and this and this and this. And I can apply the very similar kind of format to my AWS cloud or my Azure cloud. I know I always have two DCs here, or I might have two DCs there, or I might have certain app servers in this kind of scale. And God forbid, if everything breaks, I can rebuild it again. So there's part of my DR plan coming in at the same time. So, do look at these frameworks and see how you can leverage them. Again, other extensions of things like Ansible and Chef. How do you keep the apps on there consistent across these clouds? How do you make sure the versions are the same? Mismatches here can also sometimes cause problems. So do try and keep some consistency there. And you can also then, that kind of ties back to your ROIs. Is something running better in one place than another? Can you scale things down? Keeping these things consistent and common can also help your adoption with, some of your staff. Yes, it was a learning curve, learning Terraform. But now, to me, does it matter if I consume it in my VMware platform or consume it in AWS? No, actually, I don't really care. I'm asking for a VM and I get a VM. As an engineer or a developer, do I care? No. As long as the hierarchy and the boss is above, if that's you, happy with the build, it's all good. So, I'm going to kind of circle back on some of this before we kind of do, a few other things. And, my take on a lot of this is learning this over the years is a really, really big thing is, I'm going to go straight for that top left picture is don't lift and shift. Some things might work. Not all of it does. It's, yes, dangerous business, lifting and shifting. That won't always get your ROI. We've all done it. We've had monster VMs that run our business, and you can't just pick that up and move it. You might need to start refactoring that. Do look into those kind of things. As can you do this better? Go back to your app owners. Go and understand these kind of things. Start picking at those kind of awkward questions. None of us like asking them, but unfortunately, when you're on this cloud journey, you need to start going and doing them. And again, if you're at a CXO or a head of listening to this and you're on this call right now, think of your admins. They're the ones driving this for you. Is do think of them. Make sure they're comfortable with the tools that you're choosing. Ask them the questions. You might want to be doing a strategy, but do just sit down even over a coffee. We're all pretty down to earth. We're probably, some of us might be scared of you. We're all introverts at the end of the day, or a lot of us are. Help us understand why you want to do this. Why do you want to move to this particular cloud? Why do you want to do it this way? Is it for cost cutting? Is it for this? Is it for that? Help us understand, because we may well have heard of a tool that can help do it as well. And again, I've done many data center builds, and my common thing was a tool bag. I had certain tools in there, be that cage nuts, extra patch cables, screwdrivers, wrenches, yes, a hammer at points, but understand your toolkit before you kind of head to site. I've mentioned Terraform there. There's a lot of other tools like you can integrate with things like Circle CI and GitHub for continuous integration, and keeping things consistent. And you may well want to use CloudFormation if you're just an AWS house. Go look at those toolkits, and that is why I kind of veered back that way. Is I knew I was going to be going across clouds, but if you're only looking at one cloud, understand what's in that tool bag or what you need in that tool bag before you go out there. And again, I'm going to be really just might split the room. Is please don't use cloud as an exit only strategy. Understand what you've got. As much as it pains me, and it's probably going to upset people on this call, is your IT nerds, as much as they love hugging those servers, they might be for a reason. Understand what's on them. Data is the biggest thing. Here in the UK, we have some interesting laws that make well say we need to hold it for 2 years, 5, 7, 12, and one thing I worked on recently, 25 years. So yes, they might be hugging it. You might need to put some pressure on them, and even system admins, go get creative. I'm not going to name the particular brand, but we can all buy these network attack storage devices now. And I found that actually dumping all my stuff on there and maybe buying 2 and splitting that across sites and maybe cycling through those every few years was a much cheaper option than just dumping an S3 and keeping it there for that time period. So, storage is only going to get cheaper as it gets older and things like that. Do just look at creative ways of doing that. It might be a cheaper option for you. And the biggest thing, again, after today as well, is please don't forget backups. This is such a common thing that I've, unfortunately, from the ISO side, when I've sat there and gone, okay, how do you back stuff? And they're like, it's in the cloud. It's safe. I'm going to pop up this little great image now, which I've hope you can all see, which I've showed to many people before. Is the only way I can put this is do understand what you're responsible for. Even with Office 365, if you look through this, you are responsible for that data and information. Just because it's in Microsoft's cloud does not mean that they are responsible for your data. If your email goes missing, that little blue box there means you're liable for it. You are responsible for that data. They will try and assist, but unless it's their fault and their data center is burnt down and they've got a copy of it, at the end of the day, depending on what you've got with them, you need to make sure that that data is safe. Again, like the account and identities, you're not going to phone up AWS or Microsoft or something like that. Say, actually, my user forgot their password. Can you reset it for them? Do understand your responsibilities when you're moving these things to the cloud. Again, that goes back to the tooling. Can you push that further down the stack? So rather than having, maybe a third liner or second liner or first liner, or even dare I say, do it self-serve. During COVID, I rolled out a lot of self-service platforms that we could enable our users to reset their password by accepting a phone call or SMS with multi-factor authentication, just resetting their passwords themselves. It saved a lot of calls, and it sounds really silly, but do go look at simple things like that because it will free up your teams. So I'm just going to flip to the next slide, and hopefully it's going to work. So I'm going to kind of dive off the cloud a little bit and start looking at some of our product and start going into a bit of our background, just very briefly, and kind of say, there's a lot of this information going around, and how do you keep up with it? So, this is something, a bit of an old video now. There's actually now close to 28,000 KBs published in English alone. So, how do we kind of help with this, and how do we start helping with the clouds? And I'm going to have a bit of a poll. Actually, I might do the poll very shortly. I'm just going to give you a bit more of a background to our company. And I think I'm going to do the poll there before I go a bit more deep dive, because I'd be interested to see what people are looking for. Ringcast history is, all the guys you can see on the screen, I've met them all personally before working for Ringcast, a lot of them. And, they're very much like me. They're in the trenches. They were system admins. They were trying to get things working. And they came across challenges like this, when people were building these private clouds. They're absolutely amazing skilled people in their area. It was founded back in 2014. And all these guys kind of came from the Center of Excellence for IBM. So, if these are the big customers that you might have seen like today that might have got hit, that could have been down. And, how do these guys kind of get things back up and running? So before I go off into some of the other stuff, I think I'm going to run the poll. some of you will get a copy of this if you're watching this back, because it'd be really intriguing to me. So I'm just going to launch that because it would just help me kind of tailor a few of the next slides as well. I'll just grab a drink. So hopefully everyone's just got a couple of questions up on the screen. It'd just be intriguing if you don't mind. Some of you don't mind answering them. It just kind of helps me look at some of the next bits. We're just getting some really good answers. Bear with me a second. It's really interesting to see a lot of people on this webinar today are already using some form of cloud technology, which is good. It's also interesting to see the spread of stuff as well. Well, I'll leave the poll open for a bit longer. So, and while you're filling that in, I'll just kind of, oh, I've just seen a terrible typo that on here. Whoops. Apologies for that. So, what our product in essence is a proactive tool that can use AI assisted knowledge and also stuff that that parsing that we've written. They can look at different platforms such as VMware, AWS, and Azure, and understand how they should be configured and how they should be set, and basically try and highlight some potential issues for you that you might get hit by. Is this a misconfigured service? Is this a misconfigured part of storage? Are you applying a latest patch that might cause some issues somewhere down the line? And it's just it's one of those things that can hopefully be like that extra team member for you. We've all got busy jobs. Trying to keep these systems online and healthy all the time can be challenging. I'm not going to lie. Being in the trenches myself, the last thing you want is someone at your desk, or dare I say, if you're a business owner, you don't want to be going to your IT team and asking that awkward question of why everything was down today. And sometimes it's just really, there are technologies moving so fast. How do we keep up with the patching? How do we keep up with the different updates? And lo and behold, it brings us straight back onto our next slide. Is 90% of these issues, why something goes offline, can be avoided. Sometimes hosts would go offline because there was no problem. They could have been up for a certain amount of time or hit a certain threshold and off they fall over. And when you go off and look at it, you might have configured something wrong or not done something to the best practice, and it might be something you've learned before or not something you've faced before. So this is a really good way of just getting a nice little list and trying to make sure you've got a great little health check. This kind of shows you a bit of how we work. Is we have a lot of data that gets fed in. Be this from the VMware knowledge base. We also look at people's social media best practices. We also look at the hardware. Is that still on the compatibility list? Have you done an update and actually the vendor hasn't certified it yet? We have also released some security standards. You've got BSI on there, HIPAA, PCI DSS, one that I love, but that's just my nerdy background, being an ex kind of auditor, is the ISO 27001. It's a great little way of just making sure your infrastructure is kind of in line with these things. And we do work online, offline. We release kind of, really regularly. It can just get pushed in via an online update, or you can, if you're on one of these really secure sites, don't worry, we can still get the updates to you. You can download them and upload them to your appliance. Our rules engine will scan through all those different things that are connected to it. Be that your vCenter, your clouds, your Kubernetes cluster. I should probably really drink again because I'm going to cough anyway. You know, how does this tie, you know, and how do these kind of things start tying in? And again, looking at more, you know, all this kind of cloud thing is, you know, we do natively. Oh, sorry, my mouse is just stopped. Is, you know, we can now go straight into AWS. You know, if you don't want to, you know, host this with your vCenter, you can go online. We can talk back, or vice versa. So, you know, there's many ways that we can start to do things, and I think this is the right way, especially if you're a cloud only business. As I, you know, again, that's why I wanted this poll as well. You know, there's a lot of people who are cloud only. You know, go check your AWS instances. Have you got things set right? You know, we do have tools in there to try and help you out with these kind of things. And the next one is a little bit of video, so I'm hoping it plays well. Is done by one of my colleagues, Kev. And again, if you're using that lovely keyword, I'm going to say it again, Kubernetes, we can go straight in there, and within a few sentences, you can have us up and running. And this video just blows my mind. It's not even very long at all, so it's really, really quick. And boom, there you go. Up and everything starts spinning up. So hopefully, you see here, a couple of clicks away, and it should be up and running in Kubernetes. So again, to me, that's really powerful, really cool. If that's where you are, you know, we can start supporting that. So I'm going to bear with me a second. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second, just to get a bit of a demo up, just to go through some of these things. Just bear with me 2 seconds. This more should be when these blue pieces moment. This is where I had already done, and log back in. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to end the polls, because there's some really, really interesting things in here that I'll hopefully loop back to. So thank you for everyone who's answered in there. Right. So hopefully, if everything's gone to plan, you should now be able to see my screen. Apologies if I'm not looking dead on the camera now, because it's on another screen. You know, this is Ringcast Analyzer. This is connected to one of our environments where it's already scanning multiple different environments here. You see we've got some vCenter environments, some Horizon-based environments, AWS, Kubernetes, and Azure. And what I can start to drill into is some of our best practices. And this is now where my laptop is going to unfortunately go incredibly slow. Yep. So as you can see here is during our last scan, we've come up with quite a few different things that isn't working. This is by far one of my most favorite ones. Is no word of lie, I'm guilty of this. Is you spun up a load of new hosts in vCenter and you forgot to set NTP. This is crucial for many things. Make sure things actually work properly, everything can talk in time, your logs are in time. And don't worry, I've been into many environments and set them up myself and forgot to set it. And this very quickly tells me that actually, whoopsie, this server here in my environment has no NTP servers configured. It might be running, but I forgot to type them in. It happens. I've done it. Don't be embarrassed. You know, do go check your environment. I don't know if any of you are running off and checking it now, but seriously, don't be embarrassed. We've all done it. You know, and one of the things I was going to start coming into in here is I'm going to have a look at my VPC, because I'm starting to get into cloud. I've just set all this up and I have no idea what I'm doing, which is fair. You know, some of us are all new to it. And I have set a rule here. So I've popped something up saying that it comes with a default security group to deny all inbound traffic. And one of my VPCs is set to this. So if I'm wondering why I can't quite get to my resources, this may well be it. So I can go into my findings and I can see here that these are all set for inbound traffic. These are all set in this way. So we can start drilling into even more, and I'm sure EC2 is another one. This is by far my favorite one. Yeah, many of us do this. We're trying to fix something and we just set it to any. We don't care what comes in. We don't care what goes out. And we've basically said that VM can do absolutely everything. And oh no, there's a few of these that are just allowed to do everything, these security groups. Yeah, I probably need to go look into that, as these may well be applied to some mission critical VMs. So this tells me straight away which objects I need to go look at and which security groups I need to probably go look at. And again, this is a really common one. I've done it before, is I've set some elastic load balancers for some web servers, wonder why they maybe not be able to get for updates or why things just aren't quite loading the way they should. Really simple. Some of them might not have internet connections. I might have not have added, internet facing load balance system. It can happen. You may well, it might be the way you've just done it. You might just have an internal app that doesn't need it, but it just helps out look for these kind of things. And this is a really interesting one, which tripped me up once on one of my environments, is checking that everything is running properly. If you're running something in AWS, it does a series of checks with Amazon. And I have maybe let the cart go a bit down the road first and started building a VM while those checks haven't passed. And these here are showing me that actually this instance here isn't running properly. And that isn't good, because things like snapshots or the tools or some kind of recoverability that VM may well not be talking to those backend services. So if something goes wrong with it, I might not get an alert. And secondly, AWS may not know what's gone wrong with that VM. So it is well worth looking at these kind of things. And then we can go dig even further. We're going to go to the new kid on the block. We're going to go have a look at Kubernetes. I should probably drink again, if you know that joke. And this is great that it was straight out of the box. I can start to see a few failures within my clusters. And again, I'm going to be honest, I'm new with Kubernetes, and I've just realized that actually a few of these can run as root, and maybe I need to go stop that. Again, where viewers have done it, we've just tried to get over an issue, given it all the beans it needs, and haven't gone back to go fix our problem. And I can just cover a few other things. There's been a lot of vulnerabilities out recently. So if we look at vSphere as a great example, and I can have a look at these latest vulnerabilities that are affecting my environment. And in here, you can see what it's been done by and what of my machines are being affected. And if we go back to details, we should be able to see what we actually need to run and how we need to run it. Again, one other big thing that I just want to go in here, because again, I appreciate we're running low on time, is, again, this is me being a nerd. I'm probably being completely selfish on this one. ISO 27001 is a massive thing for me. Is where I kind of came from security wise. Is you can apply this to different products. I can look at my AWS config and I can ensure that this is running across all regions, so I can stay compliant. And I can really look at my IDS, and I've actually noticed with some of the ISO controls, or actually I'm not running on encrypted storage. So I might want to look into that just to protect my customers' data. Might not be essential for you, but this is just a real quick way of flagging it. And I'm going to have a look at my VPC and my EC2 instances, because I'm sure, here we go. I can see here that actually this may well fail, but I might want to get to 3389 if it's not a remote desktop web server for a reason. So that's not a valid server that my users are going to. Why am I accessing all my stuff on the internet? Might be the way you've architected that way, but it's just picking up on all these kind of things straight away that, just common mistakes you can make. I've made them. I'm not going to deny it. We're all in a rush sometimes, and we just need to kind of look out for each other, and this tool really helps kind of your team do that. It kind of, dare I say, it covers their back of it. If we just look at the vSphere for ISO, I've gone through these, and they can be an absolute pain to implement, but this just makes it nice and easy, shows me how to audit them, shows me how to resolve them, and shows me exactly what's affected, that I can then maybe show my auditor what I've done and why I haven't done it, and made relevant compensating controls. And another really big feature, as I said, for us, is planning your hardware upgrades. If you are staying and building your own cloud, is if I want to go to a later version of ESXi, for instance, and I can simulate that, I can actually see all these hosts are maybe a bit too old. Not everything might work in them. I can actually see the server's fine, but one of my cards, or actually the driver, might need a bit of an update before I can go do that upgrade. So with that, I appreciate I'm looking at the time, and I just want to cover off one or two more little bits. So I'm going to bring up this slide while I just want to kind of go over a couple of things on the poll. It's great to see that everyone's adopting the cloud, and it's really interesting to see the spread of how people are doing. The spread on the local cloud and own data center and cloud is really interesting for me, because it's replacing that secondary data center and how people are doing things. Again, a really interesting spread. And again, maybe this is a culture thing. How kind of email and social media aren't classed as first-class citizens. And, after today, one thing for me when I'm architecting systems, and a great way of me having chats with management when I've been in my position, and maybe is again, you can flip this the other way. If your management go talk to your techies, is, have a chat with them about how much an outage would cost you and your business. I've had it in one place where I genuinely asked them for pounds and pence. If I was down for 1 minute, 2, 5, 10, 15, an hour, and really picked that out, to at one point they said, well, actually, it's going to cost us X. That downtime of an hour was actually way in excess of the piece of equipment I was asking for. And they said, this one, we did have to do, oh, will this ever happen? I said, well, this is why we have a risk register. It's probably going to happen in this time scale. And, do we really want that to happen to our business? Look at the load balancers today. Took a lot of the internet offline. Maybe have multiple. Again, a lot of business like, well, you're the IT guys just trying to spend money. And, if you're the IT guy, help them understand from a business perspective, why do you need this new sound? Why do you need these new switches? Why do you maybe want 2 different vendors? It's these kind of things where you got to say, well, not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're trying to spread that load. You're trying to reduce risk. You're not spending money because you want to spend money. You're doing it because actually, if our website is offline for more than an hour and we can't commit orders, that might cost us 10, 20, 30, hundreds of thousands of pounds, maybe into the millions if you're really big. And it's really interesting to see how people have said about, how it would have survived. Again, it's a bit of a blow. A lot of people are only damaged reputation. Some of you even said no, and fair play for you being brave, because it's true and it's honest. I've seen businesses crumble because their email platform's gone offline, or their website's gone offline, or their ERP system isn't accessible during those key times. So go have a look at these things, and when you're moving to cloud, it's going to kind of come onto it in a minute. It's looking at these backups. Is people say they've got cloud backups. That's great. I'm so glad that people have also put thought into this. Is all this multi-cloud stuff, and where I'm trying to wrap this all up is architecture. Nothing's changed. It's just someone else's data center. I wish I had a picture for this. Is you are looking at someone else's, at the end of the day, you're just consuming someone else's data center, and they've got it all there pretty there and ready for you. Architecture is key. Spread these things out the best way you can. If your website's in one place, maybe spread it to 2. If your email platform's in one place, that's a bit harder to spread, but make sure you maybe have a copy of those emails somewhere else you or your staff can access. If you've got you know, an ERP system, or you know, Salesforce is a great example. Do you have some of those records elsewhere that if you need to get a mail shot out to your customers because things are down and you just want to let them know, do you have a, do you even have a runbook for this, or like an old DR plan? You know, do you have other ways of doing this? You know, cloud doesn't patch all these things up, it's just enhancing them and making them better. You know, at the end of the day, sometimes we couldn't afford to have this secondary data center now, and now we can just buy it with a credit card. It's brilliant. But do look into these things, you know, do go off and have a bit of thought, you know, do reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions. If you've got a bit of an idea that you're not quite sure on, you know, I do stress to everyone, go try the free trial, spin it up, you know, attach it to your AWS instance, your Azure, your Kubernetes, you know, definitely your vSphere, because that's our bread and butter. Just go see what's there, you know, try and make this more resilient. You know, at the end of the day, we want there to be, you know, we're there to try and help you. You know, we want you to have a nice, easy job at the end of the day. Nothing goes down, you don't have people at your desk. But that is the biggest thing with all these cloud things that I've always looked at is, you know, trying to have that two-way conversation between, you know, if you're a system admin, have that with, you know, your boards or your CXOs, and CXOs try and do that with your IT team, you know, help them understand what your business goals are, what you're trying to achieve. And as terrible it says, think about the tech last. It helps, but, you know, understand what you're trying to achieve, and you can right size that into the right cloud, or even, after all, this is what we can do, multi-cloud, and architect it in such a way that actually, if an outage happens, it doesn't matter, everything just ticks along. But I hope everyone's enjoyed today. I said, you know, do reach out to us, have a look at our product. I'm happy to answer questions. I said I've got a bit of a security background as well, so if you know, you've got these orders on your doorstep, or you've been starting that cloud journey, you know, you want to understand things about Terraform, you want to get started with AWS, you want to get started with scripting languages like PowerCI, please do reach out. You know, happy to help anyone on their journey, or if you're that expert on that journey as well, please do reach out to me. And seems we're nearly on the top of the hour. If no one else has any questions, I think I'll give you all an extra couple of minutes back in your day, and I hope everyone has a nice evening if they're signing off. So yeah, hope everyone enjoys, and hope to see you all on the next webinar.